Hello, everybody. All right. All right. So, welcome to the Mikestand. Today, of course, is Wednesday, November the 12th, um, 2025. So, hopefully, everybody's having a good day thus far. Let me see here. Alrighty then. So, anyways, as we said, today is Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. That means it's hump day for this week. Hopefully, everybody's having a good week thus far. I know yesterday, of course, was Veterans Day. Um, so, hmm. anyways, so we're going to tonight, of course, we're going to give people a chance to come in first before we get started. So, friendly reminder to everybody, of course, if you guys haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Well, with that being said, of course, let's see. Oh, we're actually past the 3 minute mark. I guess that's a good time for me to start talking about what's on tap for tonight. So we got a couple articles we're going to go over. One from Bounding in the Comments, one from Bleeding Fool. First off, Scott Snyder said using Absolute Batman as modern political commentary would be diluting its universal message about standing up for people. So I don't know if that means that he's saying that it's a bad idea to go woke or what have you, but I guess we'll find out. We'll find out when we read the article. Also, apparently collectors are holding certain comics hostage, according to Avi Green. We'll be looking at that article. Also, of course, we'll be taking a look back at last night's NXT and looking ahead to tonight's Dynamite AEW Dynamite special, the Blood and Guts event, the men's and women's uh, Blood and Guts, and then we'll of course wrap things up with this day in each history. So, with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started here then? Actually, let me try. I'm just a little impatient here. Maybe try this. All right. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the article, the first article of the evening here. All right. All right. Alrighty then. All right. So here we go. Let's get started with this first article of the evening. Um, Scott Snyder said using absolute Batman in small quotes there as modern political commentary would be quote diluting unquote its quote universal message about standing up for people unquote. Article by Spencer McCauley published yesterday. All right, so let's see what's going on here. So, though absolute Batman's narrative themes definitely run parallel to the bleak and spirit-breaking reality that is the 21st century, writer Scott Snyder says he has intentionally avoided using the series as a vehicle for bald-faced political contemporary, as he believes doing so would ultimately end up quote unquote diluting its evergreen message regarding power, justice, and humanity. Hmm. So at least on the surface, it sounds like he's kind of decrying the fact that mainstream comics have been utilizing their platform to, basically browbeat the fandom with their, woke messaging. But um, let's see what's more. So the prominent DC scribe, who also currently helms DCKO, offered his thoughts on his latest Dark Knight outing during a recent appearance on CBR's interview-centric Hero's Journey podcast, as hosted by the site's deputy editor Sean O'Connell and the show's own producer Sierra uh, Nikevich. Met by Nikevich's personal observation that, quote, I feel like a lot of what you're doing with Absolute Batman is answering some of the core questions about what function should Batman serve, unquote. Snyder affirmed that what he would later jokingly describe as, in quotes here, the longest answer possible, unquote, there. Quote, the entire thesis, in brackets here, of the absolute line, unbracketed, was to burn these characters down to their core aspects and then try to rebuild them in ways that felt really personally resonant and exciting to us now, with nothing sacred except those core elements of what makes them who they are on the character level, unquote. So far, sounds like he is trying to write a good story. At least what seems to be being presented here. Hmm. All right. Hey, Vincenzo, I still haven't read Absolute Batman. Hmm. Hey, Vincenzo, thanks for dropping in. If you haven't already, you can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, as we continue on here, let's see. So, quote, There was nothing precious about Batman except sort of the DNA, and taking him down to the studs, like the idea was to try and figure out what what that was, what that was. Um, at least for me, and what I came up with for myself was that Batman is just a kid who suffers this terrible trauma. Instead of letting that defeat him or turn him dark, uses it as fuel to make the world better. And uses it as this kind of gasoline to become this indefatigable engine um, of change, and that's it. Quote, so if you just accept that, then everything else is malleable. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need a cave. He doesn't even need a butler or Robbins. The trauma can happen differently than it did, and so it became this incredibly exciting project, where it was very much about the most resonant and heroic version that I can create in this particular moment. If something you're so used to, like Alfred as helper, suddenly feels less exciting, it's because in this moment it feels like the more of a challenge Brighton Batman faces, the more of an underdog he is, the more energy he carries as somebody who kids can relate to. And that was a huge aspect of it. Unquote. There's some of the artwork right there. Hmm. So full disclosure, I never quote. So full disclosure, I never planned on writing Absolute Batman. I was the one that it was the one that I said I would not write. No, no matter what. It was the template, the example I gave as the like in smaller quotes here. Here's the sample house like when you come to look at houses. Unsmaller quote. I had done this process in my head with Batman because I knew him the best out of the character. And was like, in smaller quotes here, well, you could do him like this, where instead of having money, he grows up working class. And the trauma that forms him is more like a mass shooting, and the Joker is rich, and those three aspects I had as triangulation, and was like, in quote here, you could do something like this, unquote. Well, okay, so apparently he does throw a little political messaging in there. The old we got to hate the rich thing now. You know, now they kind of turned it on its ear where now he's supposedly making Joker rich and therefore rich and evil. So yeah. So again, a friendly reminder to everybody, if you guys haven't already, you guys help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. That goes for both my YouTube and my Rumble viewers. So as we continue on here, Quote, after we went to a few people and scheduling, personal reasons and all kind of stuff just kind of got in the way. Ultimately, it was James Tanyan the fourth who called me. I was right where I am now. It was snowing, and I was walking around, and he was like, in smaller quotes here, I have something for you to do. Absolute Batman, unsmaller quote. I was like, in smaller quote, who? Unsmaller quote. He was like, smaller quote, or quote, you idiot. And he was saying to me, his point was really well taken. The thing you're most afraid of is going back to Batman. You're encouraging all these other creators in the absolute line to take their biggest swings and to make this about having these characters go up against the things they're most afraid of in the world and about themselves right now. That's kind of what you're afraid of. Unquote. Quote, I took it to heart. For me, that idea of what Batman is was so at the core of this. And the second thing that was really at the core was trying to make something that would inspire my kids the way Batman inspired me back in the day. And he still does. But in that really formative moment when I was 9 or 10, and he became so real to me as a means to go up against the things I was afraid of. Quote, because that's what these characters exist to do, right? They are there, each kind of a specialized way of going up against your fears. Superman says to you, quote, I'm the most powerful, most kind of capable person in the world, but I see something special in you, unsmaller quote. And that's his way. Wonder Woman is like, in smaller quotes, let me show you by example and lead you because I believe in you, smaller quote. And that's her way of making you brave. Some of this is very interesting. Some of it is very interesting here, at least in terms of how he says he would write these characters. Let's see. Batman's way is kind of be like Smuggled. I don't really care if you're looking at me or not. I'm just doing my own thing on Smallcoat. And by virtue of the fact that he gets up from this tremendous trauma and then turns it into this means to achieve his goal, it makes it fun to root for him. Even beyond the fun, the meaningful thing about it is you want him to always win because he's the human among them that faces something that you shouldn't get up from, but he gets up from it. Yeah, that's always been the point with Batman as being part of, Batman's place within the original Justice League is that he was the one who never had superpowers. Everybody else in the Justice League always had superpowers, you know. So he was the most human in terms of he didn't actually have any superpowers, any innate superpowers. He was just the most well trained, well educated, most informed, most researched hero of the original 7 Justice Leaguers. He got by more on just pure guile and wit and guts than anything else. Granted, he had a lot of nice toys to go along with his crime fighting, but yeah. So let's see. Let's see. Quote. So here it was about what do my kids look out at the world and see as teenagers. I have one that's 18, one that's 14, and a 6-year-old. But the 18 and 14-year-old, the thing that impresses me so much about them and their whole generation, honestly, not to be too general, they see a world that's much rougher than the one I feel like we face in terms of divisiveness in politics. And just the problems they face feel much more daunting. Things are much more entrenched, and economically things are frightening. All kinds of things are frightening for them in these huge systemic ways. And yet they were very determined not only to change the world, but to just not get beaten down by the state of things and the zeitgeist, and instead refuse to accept things the way they are in the world, and such as we're handing it to them. I guess unquote there. Quote. And so that was kind of the lens through which to examine this kind of burn down to his core Batman and rebuild him to say, quote, well, what would make him exciting to them, unquote. Well, they've grown up with this fear of school shootings and mass shootings. My son, who's 18, had an incident when he was in kindergarten when they had a lockdown drill, and they didn't realize he was in the hallway getting water. And so he got locked out of the classroom, even though it was just a drill. And for the rest of the year, in the first grade, he wouldn't go to school without a thermos, because he never wanted to go get water again. I mean, it's just these things that you realize they have very different terrors than we did. And Batman, if he's going to mean something to them, he's got to engage those. They don't feel like they have access to billionaire stuff. Billionaires are antagonists in their world in a lot of ways. Oh yeah, because a lot of people on the left just like to, vilify rich people, vilify the wealthy. That's a way to bring people together. Let's vilify the wealthy, out of jealousy or out of whatever, Let's vilify the wealthy. So why not make that the Joker and make Bruce this? So that's what was kind of the whole primordial soup of it, and that's where it came from. Unquote. I'm almost done here. Quote, and to see young people in particular responding to the absolute universe, not just Batman, but the way that they are is been one of the greatest thrills and really like joys of my whole career. If not the greatest, is to feel like you're part of something with all these other great creators. That's bringing in turn a new young readership. Some of the they got several typos in this article. It feels daunting. I'm worried Robin is going to totally screw it up because I'm not young at all. But it's I write from the point of view of Alfred. That's the secret of the series too. It's like I'm Alfred watching Batman being like, in smaller quotes, this kid is crazy, unsmaller quote, and it's a lot of fun in that regard. drawing his thoughts to a close. Just checking something here. Oh. Can't superheroes just stop shouting in this world? I don't know if what you're meaning there is that I don't know if what you're meaning there is if you're meaning like trying to do some kind. Even though it's kind of funny, Scott Snyder said he wasn't going to turn this into a political contemporary or contemporary political commentary, but I think granted, he's not going as far as other writers have, but I think he actually is doing the very thing he said he wasn't going to do with this. So that's just my. But anyways, drawing his thoughts to a close, Snyder ultimately gave his playful apology, laughing with his host, quote, "So sorry, it was like the longest answer to your question," unquote. Yeah. Here's the thing. Based on what he was saying in the interview there, albeit he was claiming he wasn't really going to try to put, contemporary politics into it, that's exactly what he did right there. That's just my take. I think he did. I don't think he did it as, let's say, extremely as other writers have done it, but he's still kind of poking the bear a little bit there. Let's see. Hey there, Bone. Let's see. Just dropping a like. Have a good one. Well, thank you, my friend. Anyways, we're now going to, of course, get ready to move on to the next story here. Head over to Bleeding Fool. Article over there is going to go over as well. This is, of course, an Avi article, and Avi's critical on a few things here. And again, friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, we'll move on to the next article here. All right, so spectators assemble. Another Superman comic held hostage by investors. Article by Avi Green, published today. Of course, there's the iconic photo from Action Comics #1 of Superman holding up the car there. So here's Avi speaking, of course. Yet another old pamphlet is about to be launched into the speculator market, as reported by the New York Post, sans any objectivity. So, and then this is now, he's referencing the article from the New York Post here. A comic found in an attic could become the most valuable ever. A pristine copy of the first Superman comic could fetch over $6 million after three brothers found it stored in their late mother's home. The incredible find also unearthed 5 valuable early copies of Action Comics, publication that introduced Superman to the world in its premiere issue. Of course, that was Action Comics #1, cover dated June of 1938. I believe coming out on sale date was, I think, April 18th of 1938. So the Dallas-based Heritage Auction said, quote, 3 Northern California brothers taking stock of their late mother's belongings in their family home during the holiday season last year, discovered she had for decades held onto a cache of old comic books tucked away in an attic beneath layers of brittle, faded newspapers and cobwebs. Heritage Auctions says Superman has long been among the world's most valuable comics. A copy of Action Comics #1 sold for $6 million last year, while a Superman #1 went for $5.3 million in 2022. Experts believe the newly discovered issue graded 9.0 by evaluators CGC for its sharp corners, bright colors, and near perfect spine, could surpass both. And here's Avi finishing up his statement here. This is going to be a pretty quickie comic here. Yup, because locking it away in vaults matters far more than putting it on display at museums, right? And none of the speculators want to read it. Just sell it in an endless circle for higher bids. This is so boring, just as it's appalling. But at least it serves to make clear the speculator market still poses a serious problem for the industry. Now, Avi has stated before that he's not a big fan of these speculators. Okay, he obviously is a fan of somebody putting the comics out there and being able to read them and enjoy them. Instead of letting these speculators lock them away. It has been one of Avi's, and I know there are probably a lot of people who would agree with him on that. So, all right. So, anyways, so now we're done with the article. So, at the just past the 32 minutes, so I think I will at least take a quick peek. See, there's maybe another shorty here or something. Not, we'll probably just move right into the This Day in Niche History segment. Nothing here. Probably just start. I'll start with that. All right, yeah, I think I'm just gonna move on to the wrestling wrap up here, and we do have, of course, some things to go over. Of course, last night's NXT as well as tonight's Dynamite. So going back to last night's Dynamite here, or NXT rather. Back to last night's NXT. Coming from the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida, with Booker T and Vic Joseph on commentary. The show opened up with a speed title match in which El Grande Americano, who was the speed champion, men's speed champion, defended the title against Jasper Troy. Jasper Troy defeated him in just under 5 minutes at 4:42. What is believed to allow him to La El Grande Americana to move on from his NXT bookings and to get back onto like the main roster shows, focus on that more. Then in a women's singles match, Thea Hall with Joe Hendry in her corner defeated Alba Fire, who had Chelsea Green and Ethan Page in her corner. Of course, Chelsea and Ethan have had a recent string of successes as they last week won the AAA mixed tag team titles in Mexico, and then of course Chelsea Green last Friday won for the second time, won the WWE United States Women's United States Championship from Julia. Then in another semifinal tournament for the speed title, Fallon Henley advanced to the finals, defeating Skylar Ray in that, as they are seeing who will become the new women's speed champion after Sol Ruca was forced to vacate the title as well as the North American title due to injury. And then and then Tavian Heights would defeat Josh Briggs in 9 minutes 20 seconds in a singles match. In the main event, in a last man standing match for the NXT title, Ricky Saints retained over former NXT and TNA World Champion Trick Williams. It also saw the return to NXT after a bit of a hiatus of Obafemi, and what many thought he would probably be debuting on the main roster soon. There was some talk that Obafemi might even be participating in this year's War Games match, but that apparently is not going to be the case, as he's now going back to reignite his feud with Ricky Saints over the NXT title. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see on all that. So that's all that's happened on. As of course WWE is continuing to build towards Survivor Series in a couple weeks here, 2.5 weeks on the 29th. So we'll wait and see here. All right. Yeah. So, anyways, so now getting ready to now, of course, getting ready to move on to looking ahead to tonight's AEW show, as tonight they'll be doing their Blood and Guts event on Dynamite. Tonight they'll have both a men's and a women's Blood and Guts match. And as soon as I pull that information up. So tonight's Blood and Guts Dynamite, coming from the first Horizon Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina, will be airing on TBS. 3 matches have been signed thus far. So the women's Blood and Guts match will pit. It'll be let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 3. A 12-woman tag match, where on one side you have the Death Riders Marina Shafir, Megan Bain, and 12-belt Mercedes Moné, teaming, of course, together with the Triangle of Madness of Sky Blue, Julia Hart, and Tekla to take on the team of AEW Women's World Champion Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale, Toni Storm, Mina Shirakawa, Jamie Hayter, and Harley Cameron. On the men's side of it, let's see, 1, 2, 3. It'll be a 10-man tag match, as you'll see the Death Riders of Claudio Castagnoli, Daniel Garcia, John Moxley, Pac, and Wheeler Yuta taking on the team of Darby Allin, Roderick Strong, and the conglomeration of Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Kyle O'Reilly. And in a non-title Falls Count Anywheres match, AEW World Champion Adam Page will be taking on Powers Hobbs as they continue to build towards Full Gear a week from this Saturday, in about 10 days from now. 10 days from now will be so that's all we got for the wrestling wrap up. As of course I do believe that TNA will have a live episode of Impact tomorrow night to prepare for their this weekend's Turning Point pay-per-view. And I still don't think there's no matches signed for that as of yet, as they really haven't, as they've been doing more, haven't really pushed a lot of big storylines since coming off of their. So yes, tomorrow night's Impact will be live. Coming from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. A couple matches are signed for that show. Cedric Alexander will be taking on Jason Hotch of Order 4, while Danny Luna will be taking on Indy Hartwell, as that feud was heating up for a while there. And let's see, anything for Saturday's Turning Point yet? Or actually, I'm sorry, Friday night. Okay, turning. Well, okay, so one match has been signed for the Turning Point pay-per-view, also coming from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. Bringing Zarian and Nick Nemeth will be teaming up to take on TNA World Champion Mike Santana, International Champion Steve Macklin, as continuation of that feud is going on. Those two feuds. All right, so that's all we got for the wrestling wrap-up then. So I guess now would be a good time to, with today being, of course, Wednesday, November the 12th, 2025, let's go ahead and take a look back at this date in each history. So, let me see here. 1935. 2005. 2005. And 1965. All right. So first off, we're going to head back 90 years ago, as on this date, 90 years ago, back in 1935. On this date, back in 1935, the first issue of New Comics went on sale from what was known then as National Allied Newspaper Syndicate, known today as DC Comics. Of course, New Comics would eventually become Adventure Comics. It would be New Comics for the first 11 issues, and from issues 12 to 31, basically the next 20 issues after that, it would be New Adventure Comics, and then finally settling on Adventure Comics, starting with issue 32 and going for the rest of the series. So on this date, 90 years ago today, the first issue of New Comics from National Allied Newspaper Syndicate, known today as as DC, would go on sale on its date back in 1935. Now, a little more things that are interesting. Of course, this was built. This book was sold for 10 cents. Was 80 pages. Now, at the time, they were doing a lot of stories were maybe like 2 to 4 pages, and you had quite a few. You had quite a few different genres in there. A lot of them were humor, but you had some adventure stuff as well. These were anthologies. These are huge anthologies early on. There's still a few years before the introduction of Superman and other heroes and stuff like that, but you'd have like something like 20 something. Let's see, we had what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So had 21 stories here, all at about, I think, about 2 to 4 pages each. So go figure. It's very early on in the comics history, of course. Anyways, now moving on to now as we get ready to move on to the next piece of niche history, we move on to the year 1965. As what I would like to do in this particular case is I'd actually like to wish a happy 60th birthday to Lex Lang. Lex Lang, of course, an American actor, voice actor, known quite a bit for his voice work, primarily in anime, but also some animation. Among his anime works, of course, probably his most famous is he provided the English voice for the Lupin the Third dubs of Goemon Ishikawa the Eighth. He also provided the voice of Sanosuke Sagara in Rurouni Kenshin. He also, of course, he also lent his voice to Mauricio Omaeda in Bleach, the Bleach franchise. He also would provide the voice of Tucci the ramen shop owner, and Hayate Gecko in the Naruto franchises as well. Among his cartoon works, got quite a bit of work in the 2000s and 2010s in the DCAU. Of course, he lent his voice to a number of characters in Justice League Unlimited, including, of course, both Heatwave and Captain Cold, as well as Atomic Skull. He was Doctor Doom in the Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and then of course in the Batman, who would provide the voices of Clayface, Metallo, and Hamilton Hill. So happy 60th birthday to voice actor Lex Lang. Hey Natsumi, let's see. Hello Mike, my laptop died, but I made it here. Well, thank you for that. Hopefully you're enjoying the show. Enjoying the show as we're wrapping up here. With that, we're gonna now, of course, got one more piece of niche history to do. Moving ahead to the year 2005, 20 years ago today. On this date, 20 years ago today, back in the year 2005, at a Jersey All Pro Wrestling event, the tag team known as the Backseat Boys of Trent Acid and Johnny Kashmere, who were known for their time in Ring of Honor and some East Coast independents like the ECWA and Jersey All Pro and Combat Zone Wrestling. They would defeat Teddy Hart and Homicide to become the new JAPW Tag Team Champions. So on this date, back in 2005, 20 years ago today, the Backseat Boys of Trent Acid and Johnny Cashmere would defeat Teddy Hart and Homicide to become the new Jersey All Pro Wrestling Tag Team Champions. All right, so with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back here with more Niche News tomorrow. Probably maybe I'll have some updates on of course TNA. Of course we'll look back to tonight's Blood and Guts Dynamite, as well as look further ahead to see if any more matches were added for tomorrow's Live Impact. Also look ahead to we'll look ahead to Friday night's Turning Point pay-per-view for TNA. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. Oh, and don't forget, we'll be back here, as I said, with more Niche News tomorrow. And don't forget, this Sunday, I'll be joined by Rex Christian from Devil Fly Momentum. And we'll be taking another trip down Comics History Lane. We'll be looking at comics went on sale from Dell Comics at the time. Some of the features we'll be reading will include Ellery Queen, as well as The Owl, and Phantasmo, Whitey Harrison. And maybe we'll touch up on some Bosco, and we'll even maybe check out a feature called Rex King of the Deep. So that's all something to look forward to for this Sunday. So with all that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.